Alright, hello everyone. My name is Kyle. Take these off actually. First things first, get the obvious out of the way. Yes, I go into the sunlight on a quarterly basis. You may have never seen anyone this pale. I live in the Pacific Northwest. I work and do school basically all the time. And I go to the gym. So, not a whole lot of sunlight going on around here. Anyway, I kind of want to make these kind of videos just so I can look back and see what my thinking was at different times in life. And I think one of the things I've been thinking about a lot lately, the current status of, young people in the United States especially, having significantly lower purchasing power than our parents did. And I think there's a lot of second order effects from this that are happening. One of which, we're in a weird spot where the American dream for people my age, I'm 24, is to make as much money as possible in the United States because there is nowhere else in the world that pays as well as the US. Simple fact. It is the best place to work as far as getting capital and building wealth. But the issue is assets are so incredibly inflated, which benefits the top 1%, which are the asset owners, that it's making it increasingly difficult for young people to buy homes, to build stock portfolios because, everything is so expensive that all the cost of living, of life, takes away from what you could be investing. And it's creating this weird dynamic where, yes, as an American, I want to live in America. I was born in America. I want to make money in America. But it's kind of shifting to where the goal is actually to make as much money as fast as I can, so that I can leave and live an extremely fruitful life elsewhere. For example, Tokyo and Japan in general seems to be a beautiful place. I have not been. I'm not super well traveled at this point. Like I said, I work and I do school basically all the time, clearly, by my complexion. And it's so much cheaper there than to live in the US. And it's not a small amount. Like these are rapid differences, or drastic differences, I should say. Comparing, say, Seattle in the US to Japan, 1-to-1. I can pull up the numbers, but I believe it's like 60% more expensive in Seattle. The cost of living, I'm going to go the opposite way with the percentage actually, which does make them different. But the cost of living in Tokyo is 35% lower than Seattle. Rent is 50% lower. Rent prices are 55% lower. Restaurant prices are 60% lower. Groceries are lower. All these things are lower. You can compare. I'm just using a database. It's called Numbeo. You can compare two different cities. I'm using Seattle because that's one of the ones I'm close to. Meal, inexpensive restaurant is one of the categories. $22 in Seattle. I can confer that's pretty accurate. Tokyo, $6. So these percentages, since it's going the other way, it's like, it's only 40%. No, these are massive. That means it's way different on the upside. So it's a weird position because you want to have a good life. You want to live in the US where you grew up in your 20s, and yet the optimal strategy is to grind so hard, invest so much of the money you make, live so frugally that you can eventually, hopefully at quite an early age, late 30s, early 40s. Like, these are very aggressive numbers per se, but that's kind of the optimal goal. It's just you can go and almost retire in these other countries and take out 4% of your money a year, and your money will never stop growing, which has been back tested through the start of the S&P 500. So, i.e., you save $1 million, you can take out $40K a year, and the money will not only never run out, but it will continue to grow. So the first year, you're taking out $40K from that $1 million. The next year, okay, average grew 10%, you took out 4%, so there's 6% extra, and average across. So now you're taking out like $42K the next year, so it's continuing to grow on top of that. That's what I mean when I say that. But in the U.S., it's nearly impossible for the younger generation to get reasonable amounts of wealth. I'm 24 now, I work, I go to school, I've been doing this for a while. And assets have gotten super inflated lately, and I see, wow, my portfolio is up X%. This is great. And I know comparison is a thief of joy here, but you look at, okay, I had this much money. Someone who had $1 billion, $100 million already, their assets inflated at the same percentage, and it's impossible for people to catch up at this point. But I'm not saying wealth is zero sum or anything, but when there's so many restrictions on housing and permitting gets so expensive and all the regulations, that one starts to stretch towards more of a zero-sum kind of thing, which has been causing issues in the U.S. I mean, I'm not going to pretend I understand the housing landscape in the U.S., but the clear fact of the matter is housing has become drastically more expensive, and it's making it hard for young people to live. The reality of the situation. And then you look at places like Tokyo, where it's not only significantly cheaper, it looks like a beautiful country. I'm hoping to go later this year, but I'm just gonna have my perceptions on it right now. Looks like a beautiful country, very respectful culture. Crime rates are drastically lower. I think it's something like 30x of major cities in the US, 30x safer, or some ridiculous number. I hear accounts of people feeling safe walking at nights in the cities without even being a Tokyo native. No one says that in the US, walking at night in any of the major cities, I would say. Even if you're like me, I'm not exactly, I would say, a targeted demographic for being alone at night. I think if I was a woman, I'd be significantly more fearful, but I realize that I am not probably an ideal target for them. Not saying it's not possible, it happens all the time, but playing statistics here. And even I'm not exactly crazy about going to the city at night. The place is terrible, let's just be honest here. So I don't know, I'm just kind of just ranting here about some of the problems I see in the US, but I don't know, it just seems, if I think about these things objectively, it just kind of seems obvious. I have to pay significantly more, 50, 60% for certain things, and yet it seemingly has lower quality of life, less safety, worse infrastructure, just overall more issues. I mean, if you look at trains in the US and buses and all these things, they just not very safe places across the board. And you look at some of these trains in some of these other countries, like I'm using Japan as an example because I think Japan has a lot of good attributes of somewhere that I would personally want to live. It's so safe, everyone's very respectful, there seems to be all these upholstered seats. Maybe I'm just drowning in propaganda here, haven't actually gone yet, but it's just hard for me not to wonder about that. And no, I would never go and work in a place like Japan, which is this other interesting dynamic where it's like, okay, well, I know for sure the best ROI on my time is to work in the US, get as much money as possible, invest as aggressively as possible so you can have the freedom to live in a place like that and enjoy the fruits of your labor without having to work at those wages, which are lower in other countries. Now, I know people will have issues with that, saying, oh, you're just gonna, enough people will go and you'll price them out of that area too, just kind of what happened you could say that's what all the asset owners in the US did too. And I don't know what to do with that argument. That seems kind of valid. So it's a complicated issue. I'm not gonna lie, because enough people migrate over, and it becomes a bidding war for housing there too. So these things aren't simple, but it does just lay into question the landscape of the U.S. And statistically, I can look at my salary range, and I can look at all of these different variables, my education levels, my current net worth. I can look at all of these statistics, and I have the luxuries of having a super supportive family. I am 24 and I still live at home, which I think is good because I like to be around my dogs, and I like my family and my mom, and I can help out here, which is also, it's weird that this is kind of a very looked down upon thing in the US, where it's not really other countries, because you're gonna be with your family, you're gonna help each other out, it's easier than being on your own, all this sort of stuff, you save money. So I can look at these things and say, wow, I am in statistically an extremely beneficial situation compared to other people. Like my income's in the top percentages, and for my age and my net worth, because I'm being able to be at home and save so much. Like I have all these privileges that other people don't have. I got to go to school, and I'm looking to do more school while I work, and all these sorts of things. And even I am not hyper comfortable. I wouldn't even say comfortable. So it's like, I'd say I'm comfortable, but it just makes you wonder if I'm in these top percent area and I'm not fruitfully wealthy by any means at this age. I don't even understand how it can continue for so long. We're seeing massive pushback, and people are very frustrated, especially young people are very upset because their lives are worse than their parents were at their age, and they should be angry. It's very sensible. You kind of hear where, I think Scott Galloway talked about this, where he talked about once you own a home, you become very concerned about new roads and new building, because that's disruptive, and you don't want that when you have a house. So you add all these permitting laws and all these certain things, and you want to make it difficult for everyone else to get a house because you already own one, so you don't really care. And this seems to be what's happened in the U.S. And it's sad because those people can think of their children and be like, well, we need less regulation to bring down the cost of housing, and all these different things. Sorry, I'm jumping all over the place, but I'm just ranting here. If I'm in such a fortunate position and I'm not hyper comfortable, then how does the system even continue to go? For all those people less fortunate, I can't even imagine. Born in a family that's well off and established, and the opportunity to pursue education, and no mental health issues. I'm healthy physically. It worries me for how it even continues if most people don't have that. What happens here? Obviously it seems the next step is trying to cut all this regulation and make housing more affordable and try to stimulate the economy and all these things, but we're also just fighting all these different things, and it's just hard to make the case to live in the U.S. besides working here, saving as much money as aggressively as possible, and leaving. And it's not just the houses, as I said, or it's not just the cost of living, it's the crime, it's the... I don't know, there just seems to be some culture wars going on, and it's... As someone who doesn't really... just wants to live a good life, make money, to retire, and do what I want with my time. I don't know, it just becomes hard to stomach the current way the U.S. is. I love the U.S. And I'd of course love to stay here. But at a certain point you gotta look at the numbers, at the reality of the situation, and reconsider. Anyway, I think it also depends on your situation. Like, if you have tons of family or tons of friends and you're a hyper-social person who needs those things and doesn't feel like you can thrive in another place, then yes, all of these come into account. I'm not discarding that. I'm just saying for my situation and looking at it, and many others that maybe don't have tons of family around, and it's just kind of like, why am I doing this myself? Just because it's more comfortable? Like, mentally comfortable, avoiding change per se, but not actually comfortable. These are just things to consider. Anyway, I'm just ranting, you know. This is just for me to look back on, of course. I don't, you know. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.